إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في الكتاب المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فراغ إلى آلهتهم فقال ألا تأكلون ما لكم لا تنطقون فراغ عليهم ضربا باليمين فأقبلوا إليه يزفون صدق الله العظيم. Dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, we live in times where we see a rise in Islamophobia. We live in the post 9/11 era, where Muslims aren't viewed in the most positive light, where Muslims aren't viewed as people of peace or people of love and compassion. Rather, the Muslims are viewed by the majority due to what the media shows them as a religion of hate or violence or whatnot, whatever they may show Islam to be. And in such a time, we ask ourselves the question that how do we as Muslims live in this country? How do we battle these stereotypes that are being created about us? And what examples can we use to learn about this? And the best example that we can use, of course, is the Prophet ﷺ. One time the Prophet ﷺ was standing in Mecca, and somebody came up to him, a Sahaba came up to him and he said, Ya khayr al-bariyya, O best of mankind. And the Prophet ﷺ responded to him and he said, of course the Prophet ﷺ is the best of mankind, but out of modesty and humility he said to him, that is my father Ibrahim alayhi salam. He taught us that the best of mankind is Ibrahim alayhi salam. And we know that there's only two Khalils. Khalil means close friend or confidant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's of course the Prophet ﷺ and Ibrahim alayhi salam. So his status is above even other prophets. And his example is one we can use in this time so we can better understand how we go about living our lives. There are 5 main lessons that I want to focus on. We've all heard so many stories about Ibrahim alayhi salam, how he was told to sacrifice his son, how he took his family and left them by Safa and Marwa, how he built the Kaaba. There's so many stories about Ibrahim alayhi salam in the Quran, in the Hadith. But the one that I want to focus on today is a story about his life as a young child. Because from that story we can gain a lot of wisdom. When Ibrahim alayhi salam was a young child, and it's narrated by many scholars that when he first started battling the falsehood that was being taught at his time, he was merely 13, 14, or 15. 3 opinions are 14, 15, or 13. He was at such a young age when he was started talking to people about how he didn't think that the idols that they were worshiping were the actual gods. So the 5 lessons that we're going to learn today. The first one is that Ibrahim alayhi salam, as a young child, he had this intellect where he thought and he kept thinking about the realities of the idols. He was 13 or 14 or 15 and he started thinking about how could this be my God? This God can't talk. This God can't do this. This God can't do that. How can he be my God? So at such a young age, Ibrahim alayhi salam was blessed with intellect and the ability to contemplate on the situation that he was in. And so the first lesson we learned from the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam is that a Muslim child is one with intellect. Why is that? It's because when we try to think about our own beliefs in Islam, we try to think about what we're taught from a young age, we are those people that are rationally thinking. Because everything Islam teaches us, everything is logical, everything is rational. And if we really think about Islam and its rules and its laws, we can see that it's a very rational religion. And Ibrahim alayhi salam was a rational young man. As a small teenager, he was a very rational young man. So he used his intellect to understand the situation and understand at that age, regardless of the pressures of society, regardless of the fact that everybody around him believed in something, regardless of the fact that everybody around him taught him this from day one, that idolatry is the truth, he used his intellect and realized otherwise. The second thing is that Ibrahim alayhi salam had courage. And his courage was not any type of courage, because most of the time, courage stems from what? Pride and ego. We feel courageous that we can do this, we can do that. But the true courage is the courage that stems from faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What happened? Ibrahim alayhi salam, after thinking and contemplating for such a long time about these idols, why are people worshiping them? He built up this courage because he understood that there has to be a higher power that's all-seeing, that's all-powerful. He had no wahy at this time. He was not a prophet. But he knew that some entity was out there that was giving him protection, that was seeing what he was thinking, what he was doing. And he had this faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without even really knowing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. So what did he do? There was a time when the people of his village, of his town, they went out to do a celebration. And Ibrahim alayhi salam made an excuse to his father and he stayed home. And then he went to the temple when nobody was there and he started asking these gods, are you really God? What can you do for me? Like he's poking at them, playing with them, like, show me some sign that you're God. And he didn't find these signs within these idols. So what did he do? He broke down all the idols. And you can imagine, this is a temple where everybody in the town comes and worships, where the king and the noblemen all come, they gather here to worship. And Ibrahim alayhi salam had this courage, he had this fire that he knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was there, will protect him. And then he just destroyed all the idols. He just broke them all down. And that's a courage that we have to understand, because it's not, like I said, not courage that stems from ego or pride, but it's a courage that we get from faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And living in the society, in what we know as the society that we're in, we have to have this courage from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when someone comes up to us and asks us these questions, why are you wearing hijab? Why do you believe in this? Why do you do that? We can't just say, oh, we were taught this at a young age. We were brought up doing this, so that's why we know it. We have to have courage and proper faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to say, no, this is because I firmly believe this is right. This is what I firmly believe in, that's why I do it. And this is the courage that we learn from Ibrahim alayhi salam. The third thing that Ibrahim alayhi salam demonstrated in his life as a teenager is that he made sacrifices. And when we firmly believe in certain principles, when we hold certain principles dear to our hearts and we firmly believe in them, we have to sacrifice for them. For example, the hijab, it's a principle that we firmly believe as Muslims, it's what we have to do. And we have to sacrifice for that, because the entirety of society will tell us, why are you covering your hair, this and that? You'll get hate for that. But we have to sacrifice and we have to keep it on. We have to, sometimes you might go for a job interview and not get a job because you're a hijabi. Or sometimes you might go for a job interview and you might not get a job because you want to follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and keep a beard. But these are sacrifices that we have to make to uphold our principles and never compromise on those principles. Ibrahim alayhi salam was told by his people, by the people of his nation, that we will kill you. And he's a child, we will kill you. His father actually said, if you don't leave your beliefs, لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ, I will personally stone you to death. Told Ibrahim alayhi salam at a young age, between 13 and 15 years old, if you don't stop trying to go against these gods, I will stone you to death. And imagine your father telling you he'll stone you to death. But Ibrahim alayhi salam, he knew that he was not going to compromise on this belief, that there's no way these idols are my gods, and that there is an all-powerful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so he did not compromise on that. And that's something that we should really understand, because peer pressure is very strong. Everybody wants to pull you in the wrong direction. Shaitan's everywhere, yeah? So it's very hard for us to stick to what we know is true. But Ibrahim alayhi salam teaches us that we hold on to those principles, those beliefs that we know are true, and we don't compromise on them. The third thing that Ibrahim alayhi salam did. So what happened when he knocked down those idols? They said, سَمِعْنَا فَتًى يَذْكُرُهُمْ. They said, we heard of this child. They were asking, مَنْ فَعَلَ هَذَا بِآلِهَتِنَا. They were really angry. All the people of the town were angry. How could somebody dare to destroy our idols? And they were like, مَنْ فَعَلَ, who did this to our idols? And then somebody in the crowd said, سَمِعْنَا فَتًى, we heard of this child. Because Ibrahim alayhi salam never stayed quiet. He would go ask people in the town, why do you believe in this? Why are you doing this? لِمَ تَعْبُدُ مَا لَا يَسْمَعُ وَلَا يُبْصِرُ. Why do you worship something that can't hear or see, that can't be of any benefit to you? He would ask people these questions. So someone said, we heard of this child. سَمِعْنَا فَتًى يَذْكُرُهُمْ يُقَالُ لَهُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ. They call him Ibrahim. They call him Ibrahim. So then the elders of the community, they said, فَأْتِ بِهِ عَلَىٰ أَعْيُنِ النَّاسِ. Go bring him in front of all the people. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَشْهَدُونَ. So that they may witness. They wanted to make Ibrahim alayhi salam an example. They said, bring him in front of everybody so they can see what happens when somebody goes against our gods, when someone does wrong against our gods. And this is a fourth point that I want to make, that we have to have tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's something Ibrahim alayhi salam had. He had very strong tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And us, we grew up Muslim. For the most part, we grew up Muslim. We know what Islam is. We've learned Islam from day one. And that's why we have a tawakkul that we got from our upbringing. But Ibrahim alayhi salam, his tawakkul was in something he didn't even have full knowledge of. That's the tawakkul Ibrahim alayhi salam had. We have to have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When things go sour, when things go wrong, when it gets tough, we don't just turn away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't just turn away from Islam and go towards wrong things just because we don't have that faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many people, they find themselves financially struggling. Then we get involved in things like interest, riba. We get involved in things like gambling, betting, astaghfirullah. We don't, it's not common, but I'm saying we have to have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so we can stay away from those things. So what happened? They kept Ibrahim alayhi salam tied on a stake for 3 days. And they kept digging a big hole under him. And they kept throwing fuel in there. And they lit it on fire. And Ibrahim alayhi, it was a scare tactic. They weren't actually going to try to kill this child. That was not their motive. They wanted to scare him into, stopping what he was saying, what he was preaching, doing what he's doing. And so they built this fire under him and they kept him there for 3 days. But Ibrahim alayhi salam still did not have any fear of this fire. He had trust and tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah will protect him. And then what happened? This is when most scholars say Ibrahim alayhi salam became a prophet. And he was still very young. He became a prophet at this instant because this tawakkul that he had in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what saved him. They finally, after 3 days of trying to get him to stop, trying to get him to renounce what he was saying, they said, there's nothing else we can do. We have to throw him in the fire or else people will use this as an example and also there will be rebellions, whatnot. So they dropped Ibrahim alayhi salam in the fire. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Jibreel alayhi salam, قُلْ لَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا. Told Jibreel alayhi salam, go and tell that fire to be cold. And so the fire became a source of coolness for Ibrahim. It became a garden. Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown in the fire. It became a garden around him. And he walked out of that garden. And everybody recognized that this had to be a miracle. So Ibrahim alayhi salam had that tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he was about to be killed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him. That's the fourth point, having tawakkul. The fifth point and the final point that I want to make today is that if we look at Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was surrounded by hate. If we think we know what hate is, hate speech, Ibrahim alayhi salam was in a town of angry people that hated him, that wanted him gone, that wanted him killed. That's hate. If we think we understand Islamophobia today, that's Islamophobia. Everybody's scared of what Ibrahim alayhi salam is saying, what it could mean for their town, for their beliefs. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, we recognize how he went through it. And one thing we notice about Ibrahim alayhi salam, this is the final and most important point, is that he did not respond to hate with hate. He did not respond to vulgarity with vulgarity. If we look at the example of his father told him, I'll stone you to death. And what did Ibrahim alayhi salam say? He was always kind. He said, Ya abati lima ta'bud. Ya abati la ta'bud al-shaytan. Ya abati, oh my dear father. He's asking him in a very kind, polite manner. His father is telling him, I'll kill you. He's like, yeah, oh my father, please understand what I'm saying. And at the end, when he realized his father had no hope, he said, Salamun alayk. He was so kind. When someone's telling you they're going to kill you, you're going to be angry about it. But Ibrahim alayhi salam said, peace be upon you. Hopefully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you. That's what he said when he left. He was kicked out of his home as a teenager, and that's how he responded. He didn't respond to hate with hate. He didn't respond to vulgarity with vulgarity. He didn't respond to anybody saying anything negative against him with negativity. He was always positive, always kind, always compassionate. And from here we learn the prophetic manners. That we have to always learn to be patient. Always learn that, recognize that when someone is saying something to you about Islam, they've been fed that lie. They've been fed that Islam is this and this, and it is our responsibility and our job, just like the Prophet ﷺ did, to respond to that with what Islam teaches so that we can show what Islam really is. So the 5 main points that I've said about the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the first one is that we have to think rationally. The second one is that we have to be courageous and get our courage through our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third thing is that as Muslims, we're going to have to sacrifice. Living in this society, we're going to have to sacrifice. We have to make sure that we don't compromise on our principles, our beliefs. We have to make sacrifices. The fourth thing is that we have to have tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Always trust that when things go sour, when things are not going your way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you. And the final thing is that always make sure that you're not responding to hate with hate. You're not responding to somebody saying something negative against you with more negativity. That doesn't help anybody. Always make sure you're patient. Always make sure you're compassionate. And inshallah, through that example, through our example as following the prophetic manners of our prophets ﷺ, we can display to the world the actual beauty of Islam. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us be like the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be courageous, allow us to have tawakkul in Him, allow us to never divert from the right path. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow the youth of today to not fall prey to peer pressure, to not fall prey to societal pressures. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and the youth of this generation, of this society. And we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our sins. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Alaikum. You may have heard that Islam is the fastest growing religion, but actually in this country the fastest growing religious group are Christians who are leaving Christianity. And they're not necessarily atheists, but they're just looking for a way to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in an authentic way and follow His guidance, because they may have learned that the Bible has issues in it with its consistency and its authenticity, that they may have learned that the Trinity is something that came 300 years after Christ alayhi salam. So I'm Matthew Abdul Halq at the Furqaan Foundation, and our mission is to give all those millions of people out there the opportunity, like I had 12, 13 years ago, alhamdulillah, to read a translation of the Quran for themselves. And when you're raised reading the Bible, you learn to recognize the speech of Allah in sort of a second, third-hand way. But when you read the Quran for the first time, you see it. You see it as the preserved and purified speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what you can do to help is you can sponsor boxes of our Dawah translation. This is the Dawah translation right here. It's endorsed by many scholars as the best translation for Dawah. And we send it out to Dawah organizations all across the country and to non-Muslims to give them the opportunity to read the Quran. So for every box you sponsor, that's 52 non-Muslims, inshallah, that will get a chance to read the Quran for themselves. And if even one of those people are guided, think of the sadaqah jariyah, the generations of people going after that will inshallah be doing good deeds, believing in Allah, making dhikr of Allah, and doing dawah as well, making that a sadaqah jariyah for you, your family, and your deceased loved ones, inshallah. So inshallah, let's do our part to deliver this message. We put in the effort, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who guides and the one who gives the reward.
إله إلا الله.
It's been a long road, but alhamdulillah, when the Ummah works together, we find ourselves in the final stages of building the largest Quran distribution center in all of America.
Oh Allah, the Almighty, Allah, protect me and guide.
The center is actually a huge complex serving many functions. First of all, a Musalla. Second, these rows and rows of shelves will soon be filled by Islamic books for all you and your family's needs. And an audio-visual studio so we can deliver the message of the Quran in sound and color. These desks will soon be filled by our team responding to requests for the Quran all over the country. Even bigger than that, it will be the base for our worldwide online bookstore. These shelves will be an Islamic public library for all those seeking knowledge. First and foremost, the largest Quran distribution center in all of America. This plan, this dream, is only one step away from being reality. All we need is your support.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في الكتاب المجيد بعد أن أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واتل عليهم نبأ إبراهيم إذ قال لأبيه وقومه ما تعبدون قالوا نعبد أصناما فنظل لها عاكفين قال هل يسمعونكم إذ تدعون أو ينفعونكم أو يضرون قالوا بل وجدنا آباءنا كذلك يفعلون وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن خير الأمور عوازمها وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله الذي أرسل بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعة من يطع الله ورسوله فقد رشد واهتدى ومن يعصهما فإنه قد غوى وإنه لا يضر إلا نفسه ولا يضر الله شيئا أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وأزواجه وذرياته قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أرحم أمتي بأمتي أبو بكر وأشدهم في أمر الله عمر وأصدقهم حياء عثمان وأقضاهم علي وفاطمة سيدة نساء أهل الجنة والحسن والحسين سيدا شباب أهل الجنة وحمزة أسد الله وأسد رسوله اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين ودمر أعداء الدين اللهم لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في كل بلاد المسلمين اللهم أصلح أحوال المسلمين في فلسطين اللهم أصلح أحوال المسلمين في فلسطين وفي كل بلاد المسلمين وفي كل مكان برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم احفظنا من كل بلاء الدنيا وعذاب الآخرة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله تعالى أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون أقيموا الصلاة. Inshallah, those who want to stand close or next to each other, they can move to the front, and those who want to social distance can stand in the back, inshallah. Please keep your face mask on at all times. Jazakallah khair. Just for salah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة وقد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استووا استقيموا واعتدلوا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. واتل عليهم نبأ إبراهيم إذ قال لأبيه وقومه ما تعبدون قالوا نعبد أصناما فنظل لها عاكفين قال هل يسمعونكم إذ تدعون أو ينفعونكم أو يضرون قالوا بل وجدنا آباءنا كذلك يفعلون قال أفرأيتم ما كنتم تعبدون أنتم وآباؤكم الأقدمون فإنهم عدو لي إلا رب العالمين الذي خلقني فهو يهدين والذي هو يطعمني ويسقين وإذا مرضت فهو يشفين والذي يميتني ثم يحيين والذي أطمع أن يغفر لي خطيئتي يوم الدين رب هب لي حكما وألحقني بالصالحين الله سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله
growing religion, but actually in this country the fastest growing religious group are Christians who are leaving Christianity, and they're not necessarily atheists, but they're just looking for a way to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in an authentic way and follow his guidance, because they may have learned that the Bible has issues in it with its consistency and its authenticity, that they may have learned that the Trinity is something that came 300 years after Christ alayhi salam. So I'm Matthew Abdul Halq at the Furqaan Foundation, and our mission is to give all those millions of people out there the opportunity, like I had 12, 13 years ago, alhamdulillah, to read a translation of the Quran for themselves. And when you're raised reading the Bible, you learn to recognize the speech of Allah in sort of a second, third-hand way. But when you read the Quran for the first time, you see it. You see it as the preserved and purified speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what you can do to help is you can sponsor boxes of our Dawah translation. This is the Dawah translation right here. It's endorsed by many scholars as the best translation for Dawah, and we send it out to Dawah organizations all across the country and to non-Muslims to give them the opportunity to read the Quran. So for every box you sponsor, that's 52 non-Muslims, inshallah, that will get a chance to read the Quran for themselves. And if even one of those people are guided, think of the sadaqah jariyah, the generations of people going after that will inshallah be doing good deeds, believing in Allah, making dhikr of Allah, and doing Dawah as well, making that a sadaqah jariyah for you, your family, and your deceased loved ones, inshallah. So inshallah, let's do our part to deliver this message. We put in the effort, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who guides and the one who gives the reward.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah.
It's been a long road, but alhamdulillah, when the Ummah works together, we find ourselves in the final stages of building the largest Quran distribution center in all of America.
Oh Allah the Almighty, Allah, protect me and guide.
The center is actually a huge complex serving many functions. First of all, a Musalla. Second, these rows and rows of shelves will soon be filled by Islamic books for all you and your family's needs. And an audio-visual studio so we can deliver the message of the Quran in sound and color. These desks will soon be filled by our team responding to requests for the Quran all over the country. Even bigger than that, it'll be the base for our worldwide online bookstore. These shelves will be an Islamic public library for all those seeking knowledge. First and foremost, the largest Quran distribution center in all of America. This plan, this dream, is only one step away from being reality. All we need is your support.
Allah, Allahu Allah.